Good morning. I'm going to sign off, sign back on because of the camera's not working.
No problem.
So I'll be right back.
Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the February Housing Stability Council meeting. We will get started in just a few minutes. If you want to hydrate or make sure you've got something to eat, snack on during the meeting, please do. It's thirsty, hungry work. All right, I'm going to open the February 6th meeting of the Oregon Housing Stability Council. My name is Mary Lee, and I am serving as interim chair today. I will appreciate folks knowing that I haven't done this in a while, so I know I'm going to make mistakes. Please be patient. And I will also take a point of privilege in being the interim chair today and just say a couple of words. These are hard times right now. And we are all struggling to make sense of things that are nonsensical and scary and all of the other words that we want to use there. And I have been thinking for my own self, the immortal words of Mr. Rogers, who, told all of us that in times of trouble or of crisis, look to the people who are helpers and run towards them. So one of the helpers for me in these very hard times is actually Amanda Gorman. Her ability to digest and help make sense of things that are nonsensical is helpful, is very helpful and moving to me. So I want to read just two excerpts of some recent writing she has been doing for Alex Preti and for Renee Good. So I just asked for folks to take a moment and just breathe. Know that to care intensively, united, is to carry both pain, dark horror for today and a profound, daring hope for tomorrow. We can feel we have nothing to give and still beloved this world, waiting, trembling to change. If we cannot find words, may we find the will. If we ever lose hope, may we never lose our humanity. And that was for Alex Preti. Change is only possible, and all the greater, when the labor and bitter anger of our neighbors is moved by the love and better angels of our nature. And that was for Renee Good. Thank you. I hope everyone is practicing as much self-care and self-love as possible in any point of the day. All right, we've got a great agenda today. And Shiloh, will you start with the roll call?
I will. Thank you, Acting Chair Lee. For the record, Mary Farrell has been excused from today's meeting. Councilmember DeFantorum.
Present.
Acting Chair Lee.
Here.
Councilmember Mena.
Here.
Councilmember Rogers. Councilmember Harris.
Here.
Councilmember Meehan.
Here.
Councilmember Willard.
Here.
Thank you. We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. We have 6 council members present.
And is that quorum?
That is quorum.
Excellent. Thank you. Do we have any action items to review from last month's meeting?
We do. We have 2 action items. First up is from Affordable Rental Housing Division regarding the ORCA program. ARH has included information in the ORCA monthly update this month in response to the impact and performance of stabilization investments, which she will be discussing this morning. The second item is from Home Ownership regarding energy assistance. The Manufactured Housing Replacement Program works closely to pair and align replacement assistance with funds available through the Energy Trust of Oregon and OHCS's own weatherization program to ensure that new manufactured homes are energy efficient. Home Ownership is committed to engaging with and receiving partner feedback and providing an update to this council. We will come back to the Housing Stability Council in June with their update on the manufactured home preservation vision and framework.
Wonderful. Any discussion, follow-up from council on these 2 items? All right. Thank you, and thanks to staff for the follow-up. Now we're going to go to the report of the chair and report of the director. I have nothing more to say than the things I said before, and I will turn it over to Director Bell.
Wonderful. Well, good morning, council members. Acting Chair Lee, certainly thanks for stepping up and stepping in today. We appreciate it. As always, we appreciate people being here and tuning in and engaging. I have several updates, both federal updates, a couple of updates closer to home. This is a vigorous time to say the least. And then I will defer some of my time to our colleagues in government relations to give an update as we are actively in short session and it is already proving to be active. And so we want to make sure we're taking a moment to take stock and make sure that council members know where we're at. So we will certainly do that. Before I do so, we often talk a lot here about changes, both planned and unplanned. And so I want to make sure that All are aware that Councilmember Harris will be moving on. Life continues to bring new opportunities and change. And so I want to announce she will be transitioning off of the council. We certainly have, I and we across the department have appreciated both her presence and expertise, both some of the things planned and all of the things unplanned as well. And that she has been a vigorous partner for us and helping to, I think, help advance and think critically a lot about certainly the built environment as we are seeking to advance goals around affordability and supply. And so we want to certainly send her off with an abundance of gratitude. I don't want to put you on the spot, Councilmember Harris, but I will just offer a moment should you desire to take it.
Yeah, sure. Thank you for those kind words, Director Bell. I'll just note that, it was of course an honor to be appointed to this council, and it's been a pleasure and working with you all. So I think I'll just keep it brief and say thank you for the support over my time on the council.
Yeah, well, back at you. Abundance of gratitude. And so just to take stock of where we're at, so I will be working with the council over the next several weeks to do a couple of things, which is one, make sure that this body has a formally appointed chair. We have a plethora of council members have been gracious to step in to help make sure that these meetings and the agenda can remain steady and engaging. And we want to make sure that that seat remains formally filled. And so we'll be working to do that. Just for broad awareness based on the governance of the council, if the governor recommends for appointment a chair that is actively on the council, it does not create a new vacancy. So just for kind of awareness of that. And then secondly, the thing we'll be working to do is to assess sort of the next steps in filling Councilmember Harris vacancy. And that obviously we've got some big work ahead of us, and certainly wanting to make sure that we can collect talents and expertise and also have a good understanding of gaps and needs as well in that regard. So I will intend to have pretty regular updates both to the council that I will also make sure are brought to this table for public awareness as well. So let me start through my flurry of updates here. They're a little lengthier than normal, so I appreciate the grace in advance. Let me start with the federal updates from a housing perspective. So we have probably been watching very closely over the last several weeks and months to see if and what action would come from the federal government to help fulfill the promises that we heard around addressing cost of living and to help increase supply. More specifically, over the last few weeks, what we heard out of the White House was a promise to deliver some of the most aggressive, I think that was the quote, most aggressive housing reform plans in American history by early this year. It's been curious. We haven't quite seen that yet. What we have seen more recently is a direction to Fannie and Freddie to buy up several $100 billion of mortgage-backed securities. This was intended to be a strategy to help reduce cost, particularly in the home buying space. When we looked preliminary at some of the data kind of from objective, kind of neutral third-party analysts, I think the recommendation, not verbatim, but my gathering from it was that it would only have a pretty temporary and small impact on mortgage rates. And so there's intended to be a flurry of executive orders to limit large investors from purchasing single-family homes, something that we've seen both here close to home in certain places of Oregon that have been a place of major concern across the country. We've seen different forms of legislation and other action to sort of contain those issues, particularly because sometimes we see in pursuit of addressing affordability or addressing supply, then the very people that live in those communities can no longer afford to live there. And so several federal agencies have been required to work over the next several months to put forth a set of recommendations. Again, these are recommendations that we have not seen to fulfill that promise. And so we'll be watching very closely to see how that is materialized. one of the strategies, I think perhaps that would be a generous description of it, but one of the strategies that we've heard was this idea of allowing folks to take money out of their 401k to use that as a down payment. It is unclear how much of a full-throated strategy that is versus sort of just an idea that was maybe just prematurely verbalized. All of that to say, in February, late February, is usually the time that the president delivers the State of the Union address. That then precedes the delivery of the 2027 budget request. So it will be interesting and curious to see what is said, and then I think more importantly, what is materialized, particularly because we're coming off of what has been a little bit more quiet, but still such is the case. We're still coming off of the heels of a limited federal shutdown, and we're still looking to see what is going to be materialized in terms of federal actions that are going to expressly and specifically address supply and affordability. We just haven't seen that yet. And so we'll be curious to see if and when that comes, and what the experts that are actually in the development space have to say about the utility of such things that we frankly haven't seen yet. A couple of other important pieces of legislation that came through towards the end of 2025. There was one piece of legislation, the Tribal Trust Land Homeownership Act of 2025, intended to increase both flexibility in housing and opportunities for Native and tribal communities on tribal trust land. I know there was a lot of work that had been done to look at the whole slate of pieces of legislation that, one, have been outdated and haven't gone through really formal reforms led by Native people and tribes. And so this piece of legislation came through at the end of 2025. And then the second one, if I get the naming convention right, because it is lengthy, is the Native American Housing Assistance and Self-Determination Act, which is also intended to increase flexibility for how tribes use federal funds. I think our own council member DeFontorum has talked a lot, has certainly pushed and excelled us for us to think about what flexibility means in our context, and then what flexibility means from a tribal context, and the reality that sometimes there is significant daylight between those two realities. And so it is something of close that we'll be watching to see where we can learn and build on, particularly now since we have a newer program, which we'll hear a little bit more about today, to see where we continue to kind of step up our efforts and frankly not wait for the federal government to be the mode of how we move and at what pace. And I think in particular with that second piece of legislation, when I reviewed it, I think one of the things that it seems to be trying to do is get at that squeeze of when people have earned income in which they earn too much to qualify for certain programs, but then not enough to afford safe and decent housing, particularly in a really tight market. So we're really excited about those. I will take a quick pause there before I finish to see if I've missed anything or got anything wrong, which you all will keep me honest, but to see if there's anything on those two pieces of legislation that you all know that might be good for the group.
Council members? Yes, please. Councilmember DeFontorum.
Hi, thank you, Chairperson Lee. And thank you for the reading at the very beginning. That was a nice way to start the meeting. I appreciate that. Taking a moment to pause and kind of breathe. Yeah, I would just add to Director Bell's comments on specifically Indian housing legislation. We anticipate the Native American Housing Assistance and Self-Determination Act of 1996. We anticipate a reauthorization bill to be introduced, if not in February, certainly in the first quarter of the year. It's been an expired legislation since 2016. Used to be pretty routine to get it reauthorized, and then that prompted negotiated rulemaking to develop regulations to implement the statutory changes. So it's pretty outdated at this point. It's great, and the tribal housing grant that Oregon Housing and Community Services staff have worked on. We had a meeting yesterday. Amazing. just nothing short of amazing. I felt and feel that the Stability Council and OHCS staff really heard us and really understood, what we need from the state. And so I just want to thank everybody. I don't want to get all mushy about it, but thank you so much.
Oh, well, I appreciate that, Councilmember Diefenturman. I'll pass along, materially, but also logistically, a lot of that gratitude to Tim and the team and a lot of folks that really helped put this together and helped make sure that what came out of the output was reflective of the direction and the needs that we heard. Appreciate that. Last piece of federal legislation before I get on to things closer to home. Housing for the 21st Century Act, which I don't intend for there to be a pun in the title of that name, particularly Sammy Jo, since you just mentioned the more than decade of time in which a piece of legislation has not gone through reform, but aptly named. Right now, the House Financial Services Committee is set to take up the Housing for the 21st Century Act, which in short is a piece of legislation, bipartisan legislation, that is intended to consolidate a collection of actions to help address what we know to be is one of the major issues that is standing in the way of the quality of life that people deserve. So looking at ways to streamline development. So when we talk about environmental reviews, BABA, which is the Build America, Buy America, which was well intended, certainly on its face, and I think in practice created significant barriers, I think, from what we've heard from several of our partners, to modernize outdated programs, to really assess and look at regulatory barriers that had long slowed construction. Some of the changes that might be interesting for the council to know is it also includes some important reforms for the home program, which for HUD, that's really its main claim to fame for housing supply is on home. So it looks at some important changes in there. Without getting too weedy and perhaps boring, one of the other things that is tucked in there, which is interesting, is it reassesses the public welfare investment cap. So banks have a rule that essentially dictates how much each bank, their capital can go into public investment. So community development programs, affordable housing programs, specifically for those that serve people with low to moderate incomes. I believe that cap historically has been 10 to 15. It's looking to raise that cap. So there's a whole collection of efforts in there that are intended to address some of the very things that people have been pushing for it probably at minimum a decade. So we'll be tracking that very closely and certainly have updates to share. Little closer to home, in January, the governor signed an executive order to establish a new interagency council. This interagency council, by formal name, is the Council for Immigrant and Refugee Coordination. The primary goal is to, frankly, bolster coordination across key state agencies to ensure that the output of our work is to be aligned and responsive and, frankly, consistent with the very issues that many of our communities are at the receiving end of today. Now, we long hear and we continue to hear around where people are seeing and filling the gaps around lack of state coordination. So even though that work is active and has been underway, I think today's reality requires an acceleration of that. And so it is intended to really help make sure that this body identifies policies across state agencies that may be conflicting in guidance. It also is in place to collect and raise issues and to make sure that they make it in front of the governor. And then to also make sure that community is driving some of the very issues that they are in dire need of state agency response in, and to make sure that that is how this body orders its steps. So the meeting by formal way hasn't taken place yet. I believe the inaugural meeting is next week. OHCS is at the table along with several of our other collegial state agencies. So we will have updates for this council. We'll be sure to bring those updates, particularly if and when OHCS is specifically on deck. And then the last thing that I will share before turning it to government relations is in December, the governor also announced and released Oregon's Prosperity Roadmap. So this is intended to be a coordinated set of specific and accountable actions to guide economic growth across our state. Clearly, as the body for this agency, we center and guide our work a lot around the struggles of everyday people, the struggles of our communities. And we also know that a strong community is really dependent upon a strong economy and also a strong workforce. And in order to have those things, you need to have an affordable place to call home, particularly when we talk about the establishment of existing businesses and if we want to court and grow businesses as well. And so the roadmap, as when I read it, my perception is that is intended to both guide the economic development work, not to address the specific challenges, but to build the future selves in a way where we don't just have a collection of disparate activities, but that there's a level of very specific focus. Within that report, there's a whole slew of data that talks about the realities of elevated employment as being one of Oregon's challenges, the ability to retain and keep businesses, but then also business out migration, where businesses are leaving. And so the plan speaks to a lot of things, but it is really focused on accelerating efforts in 3 areas: retaining and growing businesses, living wage jobs. Oftentimes economic growth comes at the expense of people having to be pushed out or move because they can't afford to live there anymore. And then the third one, which is excelling economic growth. So we haven't spent we haven't devoted diligent time as of yet as a body to really talk about the clear correlation and relationships between the work that we do here and its direct relationship and dependency to the economy of the state. But we will certainly look forward to not only bringing and sharing that information, but I think getting the advisement of the council, as we have long talked about stacking of policies, thinking more integrated, and also looking at the outcomes, not just the outputs that we're looking to put forth, not as a whole, but also disaggregation by race as well. And so we'll look forward to having those conversations. Before I turn it over to the government relations team, let me pause, Acting Chair, to see if there's any reflections or questions on those topics. Otherwise, I believe Jill Smith and the GR team will be ready to go as we're ready to have them step in.
Friends, any reflections, questions, comments? Please, let's go on to Ledge.
Okay, wonderful. Then at that point, I will turn it over to our government relations team. I believe Tanisha Rosas and Jill Gray will be on and maybe in transit while doing so as well. So appreciate the team being here. I will turn it to you, and drive safe as well. Hopefully you're a passenger and not a driver.
I am. Thank you, Director Bell. My name is Jill Gray, and I am the Government Relations Manager here at OHCS. And yes, I'm sorry, everyone, for the bumpy camera. I have a family event I need to go to, so you're all traveling with me at the moment. But Tanisha, I'm joined by my colleague, Tanisha Rosas. I'm going to let Tanisha introduce herself in just a minute here. I know our time is limited, and unfortunately, we probably have a lot of content to get through. So we're going to move on to the very next slide. This slide should look really familiar to everyone. This is, again, an even-numbered year. In an even-numbered years, we have a short session. They're constitutionally required to be 35 days. This slide we showed last month just to try and help orient everybody to where we are in this session. So going over it very, very quickly, the session started on Monday. That was the first day of session, so we have made it through a week of this 5-week session. There was a revenue forecast. The state of Oregon releases revenue forecasts every quarter. The most recent one was released on Wednesday, February 4th. We're going to talk in a little bit more detail on the next slide of the revenue forecast. For the moment, just know that happened on Wednesday. And then there are a whole bunch of deadlines that the legislature needs to meet this session in order to adjourn by March 8th, which is the 35th day of this session. The very first deadline is actually coming up next week. It is happening on Monday, February 9th. It's a posting deadline, meaning that bills have to be scheduled for a work session. They don't have to have held their work session by that date, but they need to be scheduled for one. It is a really pivotal week next week. We'll have a lot more information next week, knowing which bills have had work sessions and are moving on and which bills haven't and probably won't be making any further progress this session. There are some more deadlines there. I won't go over them, but just know there are continuing deadlines that the legislature has to meet in order to get to the very last bullet point there. March 8th, constitutional sine die, and of course, sine die just means adjournment. That is the constitutional date by which the legislature has to end. So the next time that Tanisha and I come talk to you in March, we'll have a lot more information about what are those bills that have made it and how we're ending that session. But as I said, we're going to talk just momentarily here about the revenue forecast. What you see here on the slide is about the general fund, and I wanted to just point out that the state's budget is made up of a variety of funds, but we're going to focus here on general fund because these are the most discretionary funds. The legislature has the most leeway in determining how to use these funds. And most state agencies, certainly not all, but most have an allocation from the general fund to that state agency. As you can see from the first bullet point there, in total, the general fund revenues were up $106 million from the previous forecast. There's a lot behind that. There were some revenues that increased, some revenues that decreased, but as you see, in total, general fund revenues were up $106 million, which is good news. However, and I will draw your attention to the line starting, however, legislators believe they need about $750 million in order to balance Oregon's budget this biennium. That $750 million is made up of a lot of different things, but the three biggest things are there was a budget deficit of $63 million that the legislature needs to find funds and sources for that $63 million budget deficit. The second area is we have state agencies primarily driven by Oregon Department of Human Services and the Oregon Health Authority who are making large funding requests of the legislature this session in order to implement sections of H.R. 1, which is the bill Congress passed that was termed by some as the One Big Beautiful Bill. And then the third piece is the legislature wants to have an ending fund balance, really meaning a cushion, a source of funds for any future needs this biennium. Those three things make up about $750 million. Having $106 million of revenue, additional revenue in the general fund certainly helps, but it narrows that to about $650 million that the legislature needs to find. The legislature is expecting to make budget reductions this session. So far, there have been no actions taken. The legislature has been receiving information but hasn't made any decisions. I expect those decisions will actually be happening later in session. So when Tanisha and I and talk to you in March, we will have, all right, we can move to the next slide. And I think I'm turning it over to you, Tanisha.
Sorry about that. I couldn't get my Zoom to let me unmute. Perfect. So I'm going to chat through some of the priority bills we are watching. As a state agency, we are neutral on bills, but we are also very actively involved in just answering questions and being honest about the consequences of bills. So we do have priority bills we are watching and have answered some questions on in committee and just behind the scenes. So the first one we are watching is Senate Bill 15. Oh, I think I jumped actually. So the first one we are watching is House Bill 4136. It is brought by our partners and other advocate groups, but a lot of our partners, Housing Oregon, Housing Alliance, they are also pushing and advocating heavily for this bill. So that's House Bill 4136. It would disallow a mortgage interest deduction for residents other than a taxpayer's individual principal residence. So you wouldn't be able to do a second home, vacation home, mid reduction. There are, they would like to use the money that the state would then save to put into a down payment assistance program. And so we are neutral on it, but we are watching it since it would require us to utilize those funds if passed. House Bill 4036, again brought by our partners and our advocates, establishes the Preserve Affordable Homes for Oregon Fund, and it deposits Article 11Q bonds to be used to preserve affordable housing at risk of loss. So Natasha has presented in front of House Housing and will be presenting in front of the Transportation Economic Development Committee in the next few weeks to talk about Article 11Q bonds and whether or not they can be utilized for preservation. We also are tracking House Bill 4037. It has some technical fixes for the Moderate Income Revolving Loan Fund that are important based on some unforeseen consequences of Senate Bill 48. And so ensure the effectiveness of that legislation from the 25 legislative session, there are some technical fixes to really allow those benefits to be brought into the MURL program. House Bill 4149 requires school districts in the Oregon Department of Education to help homeless students. And lastly, House Bill 4082 allows each city or metro to add it to its urban growth boundary, either a site for manufactured housing dwelling parks or sites specifically for housing for older persons. And so it would allow a one-time UGB expansion if a city wanted to do one of those two kind of developments. So going to the other bills that we were tracking, Senate Bill 1566 exempts certain projects for public works primarily related to affordable housing from the requirement to pay a prevailing rate of wage. We are also tracking Senate Bill 1567, which establishes the Mixed Income Development Loan Fund for the purpose of developing a mixed income housing loan program. This would expand on our mixed income bill from Senate Bill 684 from the 25 legislative session. So this is Senator Pham's bill that would make the program do even more. And then lastly, Senate Bill 1514, which repeals the statute enacted by House Bill 3115 from 2021 that established objective reasonableness as a statewide standard for city and county laws regulating the use of public property for persons experiencing homelessness. So even though there are lots of bills we are tracking this session, there are also capital construction requests. So each legislature gets to put in requests for capital construction dollars. We were told by our advocates shortly before session that there was a request for $100 million additional dollars for Lyft home ownership and $100 million Article 11Q bonds for preservation. So these would be in addition to what we received in the 2025. They were brought by members on behalf of a partner organization. So those are those. And then I think I skipped a slide when I couldn't get my sound on, so I do apologize. So I will jump back a couple slides. Just like Jill said, there are budget reductions that the legislature is considering. So in the vein of that, our subcommittee, which is the Transportation Economic Development Subcommittee, they are asking us to present on a plethora of things. So 3 of them are related to budget notes from the 2025 session. So if you look in the documents that go along with the bills that were passed, they will touch on that. And so those are going to be the shelter and eviction prevention budget notes. You'll hear more about those later today. The prevention budget note, which is tied directly to the bill that our partners are bringing, expenditures and outcomes report. And lastly, the governor's recent executive order focusing on housing and behavioral health. We're touching on the new things that does. And so those are all of our TED committee presentations that we'll do in the next month that we know about. And so I would encourage you, if you have time, to review those just to see how the legislature is feeling about a various array of our programs. So I'll go back to those other slides, but Jill, jump in if you have anything before we pass it to questions.
No, you did a great job. Thank you so much, Tanisha. We'll pause here and see if there are any questions, but if there aren't, Director Bell, we'll turn it back to you.
Council members, questions? Yes, Councilmember Meehan. Nope, still on mute.
Councilmember Meehan,
No.
we cannot hear you.
Let's give Councilmember Mia a little time to figure out the lots of things are happening with audio today. Anyone else? We'll come back. Anyone else have a question or comment? In the meantime, and Councilmember Meehan, when you get back on, we'll immediately go to you. Are there any requests from the team for the council in terms of support, participation with our legislative work?
That's a good question. At this point, there's no specific asks of the council. I think once we get into understanding the life or I guess potential demise of some of the pieces of legislation, I expect that there will be certain areas that we want to raise for council's awareness, particularly as they have implications for our work. And or need your voice in elevating those. So we'll make a commitment to come back, and I appreciate the proactive commitment to be responsive to that.
Thank you, Director Bell. Councilmember Meehan, any any better luck? No. It would also be helpful, so at the same time we're talking about opportunities for either growth, enhancement, or holding the line. I know because of the deficit, we're asked to produce scenarios, reduction scenarios. So it would be helpful as those continue to get firmed up and you all know where the lay of the land on. I think it'd be helpful for us to also hear that flip side of it. And, everything is always balanced by something else. And knowing where the growth is great, and knowing where the reductions might come. And I realize it's a little soft still, but when you're all ready, it'd be great to hear that.
Absolutely. Yeah, we'll make sure that we bring back specifically as we know how the fiscal realities are mounting to where recommendations actually have to be implemented and what those are. We'll make sure that the council is aware and has the opportunity to proactively advise on that. I appreciate that.
Great. Thank you. Councilmember Meehan, one more call.
Well, I'm clearly not a tech expert, but if I were, I might just say maybe get out and get back in, Councilmember Meehan, and that's probably the extent of my expertise. And then once we welcome you back in, we'll hopefully record your vote. Or yes, that's the other one. So clearly, I'm humbled by the lengths of mine. So I'll turn it to you, Chair.
And when you get back in, we'll at appropriate time stop and make sure that Councilmember Mia has a chance to offer her comment. All righty. Thank you so much, team, for the briefing and for the work. And we say take care in this fast and furious time. We appreciate everything you're doing. I think we're moving now, Director Bell, into the Affordable Rental Housing Division. Are you done with your remarks?
I am.
Wonderful. Thank you. And thank you for all that information. It's very, very helpful. So I want to welcome Director Detweiler Davey to once again be here with us. And we've got both information and decisions to be made. And we will start with calling for the public testimony. Oh, I'm sorry. Actually, first we're going to start with, are there any comments from council about today's transactions? Councilmember Harris.
Yeah, thank you, Interim Chair Lee. I just wanted to state for the record that I have a potential conflict of interest with the upcoming decisions and discussions. The nature of my conflict of interest is that Holst Architecture is my employer, and while they have not been selected by the developer on any of these projects in the past, they still could be selected in the future. Thank you.
Great. Thank you. Appreciate that. Anyone else on the council? All right, with that, we're going to hear the information transactions, and I know we have at least one public comment, and we'll leave some space for time before we get into the decision making. Natasha, please.
Yes, good morning, Interim Chair Mary Lee and Housing Stability Council Director Bell. And so I think we have a few different slates of project recommendations this morning, and then I will go through our Orca monthly update where I've included a discussion as a follow-up on the conversation that we had last month around how we are looking at these stabilization investments as a effort to intercede where there are these persistent challenges, and our thoughts for how we can be bringing transparency to that and information to Housing Stability Council. But I think we'll first go into our transaction recommendations if we can, I think, start with the public hearing.
Thank you. Shaloa, will you please invite our registered testimony, please?
Absolutely. Thank you, Acting Chair Lee. One person has signed up to possibly provide public comment. And let me find them on the list here. Zia Mays Tyrell, do you have any public comments to make?
Hi, so is this in correlation to the TIF districts?
No, it is not.
Okay, sweet. And then this we go through the NOFA to apply with this or
Natasha, would you like to respond?
Sure. This is our presentation and recommendations on financing some projects. So it's not an application process and pathway. And so I'm wondering, maybe we can get your contact information to be able to follow up to connect you into the right application processes for the TIF
okay.
programs.
And
Yeah.
this is just where you guys are going to put in the funds, and then we have about until March 9th, you said, to make a formal comment of where it goes, or
Zia, this is, oh, sorry, Natasha, just
Yeah, no, go ahead, Director Bell.
Go. Yeah. I'm not quite. I don't think that this is it's referencing our processes, so it is likely from a different area of business.
Yeah. Zia, this is, if you can see me on the screen or see my tile on the screen, this is Andrea Bell. So this is the Oregon Housing Stability Council. So we have several projects that will come in front of the folks that are in front of you for financial approval. I'm wondering if the topic that you're bringing actually is outside of what this body is going to cover today. If you're interested, I will have someone follow up with you before the end of the day to make sure we understand what you need and get you to the right place to have your comment heard. Would that be sufficient?
Yeah, that sounds great. Thank you.
Perfect. Shaloa, if you will take that as an action item so we can follow up accordingly.
Thank you. Already noted, Director.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, and appreciate you connecting. And I'm sure we'll get you the right information. Just want to take a pause and see if there's any other interest in public comment. If so, you can raise your hand and we'll call you to come off of mute. First come, first serve.
I do not see any raised hands, Interim Chair.
Thank you. Let's move forward into the transactions, please.
Excellent. So let's see, Chair Lee, Housing Stability Council, nice to see you. I have with me Ty Dunson-Strain and Roberto Franco, who will be bringing forward the first set of transactions. So I will hand it to them, and I will share my screen.
Good morning, acting Chairperson Lee and Council members, Director Bell. For the record, Ty Dunson-Strain, AD of Transactions, here to present the Phoenix Corner Apartment Project in Phoenix. It is a next slide. It is a 88 unit development sponsored by Stewardship Development, and it includes a range of unit sizes, one, twos, and three bedrooms, new construction. It previously was awarded LIFT funds already, and we're here just seeking the conduit bond approval for the amount of 11 million. The total construction cost is over 34 million, $34 million, and the project includes garden style apartments and a clubhouse and various other amenities that will provide a great place to live for families that will be returning to an area that was involved in the 2020 Alameda fires. Next slide. And Stewardship Development has partnered with Oregon Humane Development Corp. They've entered to MOU to serve BIPOC communities. The Oregon Human Development Corporation is a longstanding presence serving for farm workers and culturally, it's one of the state's only culturally specific community action agencies. Been around since the late 1970s, and they're committed to a couple of services, namely in the packet, eviction prevention, job training, and linguistic services. In addition, the stewardship is committed to reaching our MWSB target goals, and they know what to expect, and OHCS will be monitoring their progress as we go. With that, next slide. I'll open it up for questions before we ask you can consider the motion.
Wonderful. Yes, Councilmember Meehan.
Can you hear me now? Yay. Hello. Thank you very much for your presentation on this. My question happens to be about eviction prevention services. I know that this past budget cycle that a lot of those services were cut, and I know that that's something that we're trying to revitalize there in the legislation in this session. And so I'm wondering about those services, how is that part of this funding, or how the eviction prevention services are going to be funded? Is that part of this package here, or is it something outside of that package? Because just the funding is very, very limited for any kind of tenant education and eviction prevention.
Yeah, yes, Councilmember Ma'am. Yeah, so the funding is part of this, as part of they will be setting aside funding. The sponsor has set aside funding that will provide the services via the Oregon Humane Development Corporation.
That's wonderful. Thank you so much.
Thank you. And just to a little leeway, Councilmember Meehan, would you like to share your comment from the discussion before?
I was just gonna, thank the government department there for the updates on the legislative session. I was there yesterday, able to testify for HB 4136 and in support also of HB 4036, which is the preservation and the down payment bill, for the second vacation home. And there's not a lot of big actions going on, but this is kind of my area that I like to participate in, is this legislative process and policies, and so really excited to get this short session under our belts and get some more funding towards keeping people housed. And so thank you for the update. That's all I wanted to say. Thank you very much, Interim Chair Lee.
Of course, Council Member Meehan. And thank you for your work and advocacy. It's wonderful. Council Member Mena.
Thank you, Chair Lee. I just want to commend the team. It's great to see a project going up in Phoenix after all the problems that they've had and the challenges that they're and such a major project that is going up. It's wonderful to see. So thanks for everybody that made it happen.
100%. Thank you. Anyone else, Council? I would entertain a motion, please.
A second.
Oh. Councilmember Mena moves and Councilmember Meehan seconds. Is that correct?
Sure.
I couldn't hear the first.
I'm sorry, that was my fault. I'll
Oh,
first.
that's okay.
Wait, second.
All right. Shaloa, will you call the roll, please?
Thank you, council members. Councilmember DeFantorum,
Yes.
Acting Chair Lee,
Yes.
Councilmember Mena,
Yes.
Councilmember Rogers,
Yes.
Councilmember Harris,
Yes.
Councilmember Meehan,
Yes.
Councilmember Willard.
Yes.
Thank you. Motion passes.
Okay, let's show some love for those units. Woohoo! All right, Natasha, where do we go next?
Next, we are moving into ORCA recommendations. So this month we have both a development side ORCA project as well as a project stabilization. And so we're bringing those as separate packet materials and presentations, given that they're very different types of work. And so that felt the most straightforward in our perspective. And so I have Amy Cole here to be able to, I think we're going to start off with the ORCA project development application. So Amy.
Thanks, Natasha. Good morning, Acting Chair Lee, Housing Stability Council members, and Director Bell. I'm Amy Cole, the Assistant Director of Development Resources, and I'm here to present this month's ORCA project for your consideration. As I always do, just kind of a point in time check-in on what's happening with the ORCA and impact assessment. We currently have 13 projects under review, 56 projects in total in the impact assessment step. 33 of those are for-profit-led projects, 29 are nonprofit-led, 7 are housing authority projects, and currently we don't have any tribal-led projects in the impact assessment step. Next slide, thank you. The project that we are presenting for your consideration today is called FHX 62. This FHX 62 is acquisition of 2 sites of existing market rate housing to be used for permanent supportive housing. Society 62 is the top picture and Fernhill Crossing is the bottom picture. Society 62 is a 29-unit SRO development and Fernhill Crossing is 19 units and a mix of 1 and 2 bedroom units. As I mentioned, these are market rate properties. And though there are not currently many tenants in the properties, as the properties convert to permanent supportive and affordable housing, Portland City Code will be followed for noticing and relocation for any tenants that don't qualify as eligible as those units convert. Next slide. For ERJ profile highlights, this project will ensure that all lease-up documents and outreach materials, as well as any tenant-facing content, are translated into Spanish, ensuring that documents are accessible to Spanish speakers. And the sponsor, Do Good Multnomah, actively engages marginalized communities and involves the communities in the planning, design, and evaluation of programs and services in their properties to ensure that their needs and perspectives are considered. And as you all are very familiar with this slide, you know that if this project is approved for funding today, it will receive a letter of intent from OHCS and will move into the next step, the financial eligibility step of the ORCA. From there, projects have 6 months to complete the requirements of financial eligibility and move into commitment. In financial eligibility, a detailed development budget and pro forma will be closely analyzed by our production team to ensure that each project meets financial and underwriting standards, and to ensure that projects are leveraging debt and other resources that justify and support the state investment. The final award amount for each project will be arrived at through the underwriting process in the financial eligibility step. And I'm happy to answer any questions, and appreciate your consideration of the motion, which is on page 14 of your packet.
Thank you, Amy. Council members. Yes, please. Councilmember Harris.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks for the information, Amy. I just wanted to commend the support staff plan that's outlined in the package for these two sites specifically. I think that's the first thing that came to mind in terms of having it be separate sites and how that would work. But it says that, I just want to point out that it says resident services staff, 2 overnight peer support specialists, 1 case manager, and 2 veteran peer support specialists will staff the project. And that is just terrific to see. So I just wanted to say thank you for implementing that in that project and this project.
Amazing. Thank you. Councilmember Mena.
Thank you, Chair Lee. Just a couple of questions, and thank you to staff for answering the questions that I had regarding the current tenants. And that's kind of, I understand that they will follow Portland's code in terms of relocation, but it's an impact on them whenever. And honestly, I don't know much about the Portland relocation policy, so I just want to make sure, and I'm sure that it will happen, that the tenants through this process their impact is minimized as they are relocated, and it's for a great project. Definitely need some PSH units, but I'm assuming that many of those tenants are also low income based on the locations, and they're also in dire need of housing. So thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else want to offer comment, reflection, question? Please, Councilmember Nickelberry Rogers, sorry.
That's okay. Thank you, Acting Council Lee. And I just want to say that I am still feeling really good about the ORCA process and how it's working and bringing projects online, and just wanted to thank staff for all of their work. So thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you. Councilmember Willard.
Thank you, Acting Chair Lee. Just a quick question on here. There are 2-bedroom units, is that correct? Was that just a typo on there? So it's looking like we have 5 1-bedroom units and then 13 1-bedroom units at 60%. So are those 2 bedrooms where you have folks that are more than one household that you're going to be assisting?
Yeah, that is a typo. There are 2-bedroom units. Apologies for that.
Excellent. Because it is helpful with people experiencing chronic homelessness to just in case they need that support system in place or any type of supports that are going to be residing with them. But this is a fantastic project, and pretty happy to see that. As we've over here in Eastern Oregon, we've seen the chronic homelessness that's occurring, especially in the Portland area. So kudos to you guys. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else want to jump in? All right, I would ask for a motion, please, friends.
So moved.
Second.
Thank you. Second.
Second.
Great. Councilmember Willard moves. Member Nickelberry Rogers seconds. Any more further discussion? Chaloa, will you call the roll, please?
Thank you, council members. Councilmember DeFontorum.
Yes.
Acting Chair Lee.
Yes.
Councilmember Mena.
Yes.
Councilmember Rogers.
Yes.
Councilmember Harris.
Yes.
Councilmember Meehan.
Yes.
Councilmember Willard.
Yes.
Thank you. Motion passes.
Woohoo! Let's show the love. All right, this has been a great meeting so far. Natasha, we got one more thing on your list?
Yeah, so we have one more set of project recommendations, and then I'll be able to talk through the Orca monthly report. And so, Amy, I will hand it back to you for the stabilization side investments. And these, we also did a cohort of last month, and so it will use the same format, and the discussion afterwards will be relevant to these as well. Amy?
Thanks so much, Natasha. Good morning again, Acting Chair Lee, Housing Stability Council members, and Director Bell. I'm Amy Cole, the Assistant Director of Development Resources, and here to present some property stabilization investments for your consideration. Just to review what we went over last month, there is a primary eligibility for these projects. The property is a multifamily affordable rental property in the OHCS portfolio. The project is at risk at loss in the 2025-27 biennium. Debt coverage ratio for the property has been less than 1.0 for at least 8 of the 12 previous months. And the average debt coverage ratio for the past 12 months is less than 1.0. Debt coverage ratio can reach greater than 1.15 for 5 years after the stabilization investment. And tenant rents will not need to be increased more than 5% per year for the next 5 years with the stabilization investment. And then there is also financial eligibility, and properties must meet 2 out of these 5 criteria. Property expense to income is greater than 70%. Operating reserves are below 3 months of expenses. Accounts payable are greater than 120 days past due, exceeding $25,000. Economic vacancy is greater than 10% for over 6 months, and insurance or property tax, and the property has insurance or property tax delinquencies. Next slide. As a reminder, the loan structure for PSI is 1% deferred interest for 30 years, and it's due at the earliest of maturity, refinancing, end of the affordability period, or resyndication. And then just a little bit about the PSI resources on the next slide. There was a total of 38 million available. We had, oh, I didn't update this slide, apologies. We have 3 applications today, and yeah, we could skip this slide since I didn't get updated. I apologize.
Apologies, I should have noticed that as well.
So the 3 properties that we are presenting today are Orchards at Arenco 2, Orchards at Arenco 3, and Erickson Fritz Apartments. Information on each of these properties and the requests are in your packet. And so we can move on to discussion or questions and consideration of the motion.
Thank you. One process question, should we consider the property separately, or are they coming to us on a group?
I think that you can move them as one, and so I think the motions collectively from that packet. And
Correct.
Amy, did you reference the page the motion was? Because I lost it right now.
Yep, it's on page 20 of the packet.
Great. Council, questions, comments, reflections? Yes, Councilmember Mena, please.
You're muted.
Yeah, we can't hear you.
Yeah, I'm talking too much. I just want to say that this is a great program. The projects that, for different reasons, are struggling, and we need to find a way to sustain them and keep them going. And so, greatly appreciate everybody's work regarding this, and let's get this project stabilized. Thank you.
Right on. Councilmember Nickelberry Rogers.
Thank you, Interim Acting Chair Lee. I also agree with Member Minion how this is a great project. Just want to call out that it's 162 units, and in the times that we are in now, it is great that we are able to step in and make a difference.
Thank you. Absolutely amazing. Anyone else? I might jump in with a quick question for education. Can you just talk a little bit about why we care about the debt ratio being 1 or less or more, and how that helps you understand what's happening at the project?
Yeah, absolutely. So maybe I will take a stab, Amy, and certainly follow up. So DCR, if we think about this as like in my mind, I translate it to our household budgets. And so if you're at a 1.0, you are getting exactly as much money as you're going to have to pay in your bills. And so that is then, what is it you actually consider your critical bills? Is that just your rent payment? Is that your rent and insurance? Is it your rent, insurance, and your health costs, or your food costs? And so if we think about that basic family budget, and in housing budgets and finances, we think about things that are above the line and below the line. So the pieces that are like critically must pay debt need to be included within that DCR. So the 1.0 means that you're just covered in affordable housing financing and underwriting, which I presume differently from market financing. We don't let you have twice the amount of money that you need. And so from a subsidy and from stewarding public investments, we want to make sure that we're putting in only what is needed to make the project financially viable. And so where you could be paying a larger monthly bill for your loan or your mortgage, then that is preferred over the public funding at the front end. And so the 1.0 is you're just literally squeaking by. And so we're looking at these patterns across our projects, and where you're able to see that they are finding that they're at that really low, like they're not able to cover anything that really comes up, and probably also the true cost, because again, that's the must pay. There's then the other pieces, which are what you should also do or could be doing to better support both the building, but also the tenants and the community generally. And so and I think part of our analysis about where it is feasible that these are sufficient also found that there's projects where this investment was not enough to make them continue to be operational. And so that meant this was not the right fix. And so we're not prioritizing projects into this resource even if we, maxed out what we have identified as feasible with these resources, you still can't cover your monthly bills, then that's not in these recommendations. We also see where where with this investment you can get by, you might be at a 1.1, and so you have enough, but not really quite, like you don't really feel terribly strong. And I think that's where, we're looking at the broad series of, that this is the financial intervention, which, carrying into our conversation last month, this is the financial side. And then what else? And what does that mean? And what brings it into action to find where there's better streamlining or opportunities for policy shifts and changes? And so, to kind of seed into that conversation a little bit. So if there's vacancy issues, what is, aside from getting this, this debt buy down and having the finances start to feel stronger, what are the other corresponding strategies at the project and at the project management space where you can proactively or, responsibly, but actively, I guess it's take active steps to remedy the challenges that have created the situation. A lot of the challenges have no direct solution when you're talking about insurance costs or staffing costs. Those are things. Our action is making sure that we are have the right assumptions about how much those things actually cost. And so that's a place of catch up. But then there's those other, I think of them more of the qualitative strategies, the human driven strategies where you can be making revisions that are impactful over the longer term to be able to make the persistent kind of challenges and things that keep becoming drivers for that, elevation of challenges to be able to resolve over the longer term, and ensuring that there's accountability to that will be our and visibility will be the next piece of that discussion. And that was probably a longer answer than you were wanting, Councilmember Lee, but I appreciate the question.
No, thank you. I always enjoy learning from you, and also hearing the strategic approach, right, that we are doing within the agency. Councilmember DeFantorum, and anyone else who wants to get into the discussion.
Thank you, Interim Chair Lee. I love the sound of that, by the way. Natasha, this is a question just for my own edification, and you don't need to answer it right now, but I'm curious. So I'm very supportive of this. I think this is an amazing resource to help stabilize, some of the housing developments that are maybe struggling. On one in particular, I'm looking at, I don't want to get the name wrong. It's the third one. It says there's 62 total units, 52 of them are affordable. And I'm just curious, when you look at the vacancy rates, is there any correlation between the affordability and the vacancy? Is it the affordable units that are experiencing vacancy or the others? And you don't have to answer that right now, but I'm curious because we have mixed income developments, and I do see a trend in ours, and I don't know if it's the same or if it's even a trend outside of our developments. So I'd be really interested in the answer to that. Thank you.
Absolutely. And I am really interested to understand what you're seeing as well. So maybe we will need to follow up. And we are looking at deeper interest and curiosity about the vacancy trends that is, experiencing in different communities and projects. And I think, certainly rent flattening is part of a driver for it, but it is, with all things, it's more complicated than that. But I will think that probably in a future meeting, whether it's next meeting or the March or April, we will have additional information and kind of context to be able to share back, which would be likely helpful for discussion.
Great. Let's tag Councilmember DeFantorum's question about the specific project for next month as a follow-up.
Yeah.
And even if that answer is we're still working on it, great. And then the other thing I hear you saying is let's have a little teach-in and discussion about vacancy and the challenges there in general at some point at a future council meeting.
Yes, and Chair Lee, if I may just maybe offer a couple of sentiments. I don't want to drag onto this topic, but I do think it's an important one because it is it has and will continue to garner a lot of attention. And what I'll just offer is yes, in the short term, to I think a broader, deeper discussion that's based in data and from a statistical perspective, as opposed to sort of, kind of broad sweeping one or two statements that I think sometimes that seem to conflate what are very complicated issues that have been in the making. And so I think one of our goals under Natasha's leadership that we have been and are doing is trying to do a broader assessment of what we understand the data is telling us, and then where there are gaps in our own data. I think that's one. I think the other piece that I'm thinking about is, as we have some of the heady and important policy debates and conversations, where I will just say on the front end, internally, perhaps externally, we're just not going to agree on all the things, and I'm okay with that, and we can have healthy debate about that. What I want to make sure in that, and it's more just saying it out loud, is not to comport those issues to be one of burden on tenant, like it is the tenant's issue. The tenants didn't create the issues. People that are struggling haven't created the issues, and it is not their burden to solve the issue. And I want to be very specific and clear about it, because I think it is a easy and patterned thing that I see get comported, which is just inaccurate and wrong. And I'll continue to be very consistent about that. It also brings no solutions to the table as well. And so I think as we're looking at the trends, as we're looking at the realities of the challenges, and to understand that, yes, there will probably be some monetary intervention that's needed. There's probably some wholesale policy that we need to look at within our own selves and look to see as we prepare for the next budget, where there's actually action to take that maybe is not monetary in nature. But I will just offer that I'm grateful that it's getting a lot of rightful attention, because it is the issue that the nation is contending with. It is not a issue to be on the burden of the tenant. That's just doesn't make any sense to me when those types of statements are made. And so I think we'll look forward to having those types of conversations to understand what the data is telling us, to make sure that we understand gaps in our own perception and understanding. And also, I think to have a much more wholesale conversation around what's in front of us that can be done, because I think the other piece of it is we're also not bystanders to it. We're not going to just sit here and watch the issues continue to unfold and crumble. So I'm eager for, one, you bring it up. I'm grateful for a lot of the attention that it's getting to try to understand the important role that this is playing on a lot of owners and operators, and frankly, tenants who might be feeling it in terms of their day-to-day life, and then to figure out what that means for our own course of action. So I'm appreciative of the current digging in, and then the forthcoming digging in that we'll be able to do at this table.
Wonderful. Thank you, Director Bell. Any other comments or questions from the council? I would ask for a motion, please, on all three projects.
I'll make the motion to approve all three projects.
Thank you. Councilmember Willard moves.
Second.
Councilmember Meehan seconds. Any further discussion? Shiloh, will you call the roll, please?
Thank you, council members. Councilmember DeFontorum.
Yes.
Acting Chair Lee.
Yes.
Councilmember Mena.
Yes.
Councilmember Rogers.
Yes.
Councilmember Harris.
Yes.
Councilmember Meehan.
Yes.
And Councilmember Willard.
Yes.
Thank you. Motion passes.
Woo! Love to those units. All right. Natasha, you want to do an Orca briefing update?
Yeah, I will. I think Amy kind of covered the high level of where the Orca projects are. The document has the same information updated. And so if there's certainly any questions, always welcome. I also wanted to just follow up on, and it looks like it's in Appendix A, which is on the 29th page of the PDF, is the approach that we built out to be able to share back around, this is a new cohort of investments. This is a new type of investment, and kind of trying to do focused strategy to address the operational risk within these projects. Obviously, the risk in portfolio is broader than the ones that we are seeing and being able to use these investments for. But as we're doing that, want to make sure that we're tying back to both transparency around, how have these worked? Are there, so looking at some of the key indicators as we move forward over the course of investing these and then making sure that they're having the intended impact. And then also identifying, like I was referencing earlier, what are the other strategies that we have identified to be able to incorporate those actively into the project management and ownership as we move forward. And I think one of the pieces that we have very intentionally and responsively prioritizes speed. So these are projects where the risk is now. And so the financial risk that these will begin to go into, not, well, I think they've already been in a place of risk. And, functionally, we don't want to require that a project is actively in foreclosure before we are intervening, because candidly, if we say you need to have your foreclosure process initiated, then the lender will say, okay, great, we'll initiate it. And that's where we're looking at those more complex indicators. And so tying it to the indicators versus the lender action as the piece of understanding where that risk is. So these are imminent risk. We need the financial solvents as fast as possible. And so moving those swiftly, which means we don't want to hold up to make sure that we have every single piece of the longer term strategies fully fleshed out and finalized and formalized. And so what that is meaning to us is a couple different things. One is, again, prioritizing the financial closing, but not stopping the conversation there. In order to make sure that there is, sufficient understanding and and agreement towards that. Our approach is really to include into our legal documents conditions that when we are putting the resources in, conditions that they will need, that will identify what those areas are where we see in their application in the conversation and work with them, what are the different issues that you are? Again, is it that you have, you can't, vacancies, for instance, what is the root cause? What is it that we will want to understand what is driving that? Is that because your rents are too high for the market? Well, then in our underwriting process, so that would be done before financial closing, we need to make sure if you can't charge the rent that you have financially modeled out, then let's identify what the actual rent is you're able to charge so that we're using the right assumption. So I think that's the financial side of that. The other side of that could be there is a needed tenant selection plan update. And so there is something that is around what are your referral processes? Where are you looking at, marketing and other, plans and opportunities? Where have you built your wait list? And is there something that we can be functionally shifting at the property level to have better ability to fill those units when they are vacant? If there is, maintenance challenges or there are higher vacancies because at the project, it takes 3 months between somebody moving out of a unit and it's ready for lease up. So what are the things that you can identify at the project level to have that unit turn process be more swift? And so that's kind of the range of a range of those different items, again, more in the human driven space of actions and efforts, not financially driven explicitly. Our compliance process generally, for all projects, includes an annual reporting process. It includes a place of identifying where you would have projects that are a risk. We have a risk rating system, so we're looking at those compliance reviews on an annual basis. We're identifying financial challenges on an annual basis. And that is all that risk rating really ties to how often we're looking at a project. If we're legally required to look at it actively every 3 years, but we see in the risk ratings that there's issues that are coming up at, our policies have adopted where if that risk rating is higher, we will go to the property. And then there are risks where that means that you need to have a property improvement plan adopted and implemented. And that is then all work that lives with the illustrious asset management team here at OHCS. It is a significant body of work, and given the challenges in our portfolio, the hill of those to be able to work through is significant. So this early work in our underwriting process will be identifying the exact challenges and issues that will need to be updated or created to be able to be put into that longer term property improvement plan to be finalized as we move forward. And from a reporting perspective, in the meantime, so those are the pieces so contractually, we would be looking as we're putting the money in to identify what are the things that are already identified and acknowledged and figured out on the financing side. So where have the pro forma assumptions been updated, and where that was the problem. And then what are the other pieces that still need more work or still need more information back while we're triaging down. And then that will be all followed through. And so our suggestion that we have put into the packet is that we would be looking to then also create a quarterly report of information for Housing Stability Council. We can be including it in our monthly update that is really more specific to this investment cohort. So not including it into or revising our long-term reporting and tracking efforts, but saying for these projects, something akin to a survey, a quarterly survey that gets us information to be able to provide Housing Stability Council. And maybe I'll just do this as a screen share. I'll put this so we're all looking at the same list of items to be able to have that report include elements like, and we're say finalize it after this discussion after we create and operationalize, but information, what are the projects, what are the resources that they were attributed, the status of those resources, and what they're going to be used for. And then we can be sharing back on a quarterly basis information around, okay, now what's happening with their DCR. The income to expense ratio is the other version of that where there's no debt. So there's no debt covered. The income to expenses is literally how much is your income and how much have you had to pay for your bills. Vacancy rate, the aged receivables is, rents that have been unpaid and the status of those, as well as finding ways to identify where are we seeing the volume of tenant complaints and issues coming up. And then that PIP status is that property improvement plan. Has that been all finalized, adopted, and incorporated into that property improvement plan? And that we're thinking of this as a season of this, investments getting stabilized and into the projects. And once we're seeing that everything is back into property improvement plans, I think we'll want to look towards transitioning that to what are the kinds of we'll be putting some effort into, property improvement plans. Where can we have more of, visibility and transparency around the lift and impact of those plans and work that owners, operators, and our asset management team put a lot of effort and intent to be able to identify and resolve challenges at the property level. And so I think largely that is the sentiment and approach. And so curious for any thoughts, feedback, so that we can be incorporating that and moving it into our next steps for these projects as our investments are able to get finalized.
Great. Thank you for the briefing. Colleagues, I'm interested in any questions for clarification for Natasha about this plan, and then any feedback about the strategy and approach to start using this as a tool as we move into the future. Councilmember Nickelberry Rogers.
Thank you, Interim Chair Lee, and Director Detweiler, for your comments about this. And so my question just is about timing for monitoring. So what type of time frame would it be administered under?
Yeah, our projects are in the ones after we're approving them here, they're going into the production analyst and they're making quick work to be able to move through to financing. I think we'll start seeing those be financed within the next month and on. And our plan is that we are intending to do this quarterly. And so I think maybe if your question is what is the first quarter of that, I think we can be planning that in I think April. I think so having a status, I think start with a status, and it might be we don't have these other updated tracking because it is a status of have they been funded and not. But I think we'll start to do a quarterly update of that. And so if we start into the next quarter, and then we'll continue to add into it as we get the deeper information on the longer term performance piece of it. But be thinking of that as including a quarterly update within the Housing Stability Council packet through the starting in April, ideally.
Thank you.
Councilmember Mena.
Thank you, Chair Lee. One question I had, and we're seeing it, I think, a little more often now, especially with the addition of PSH units and the emphasis that we have in that, and that is the security in the surrounding project itself, not just inside the building, but and we have one of those projects that came through for this funds that talked about the neighborhood and the challenges associated with it. Is there something that we can quantify in terms of commitment or plan from the owners as to how is it they plan to address those issues, not only inside the building, but in immediately the neighborhood of the building itself, in working with neighbors and all those things. I would like to see a little more of that because I think that would stabilize better and provide a better community once we start digging into those issues.
Yeah, I appreciate that, Council Member Mena. And I think from a place we certainly see a lot of projects that are needing security in a way that was never designed into their operating budgets, and is a significant financial burden at the project level. And I think we have seen that across lots of different portfolios and projects. But I think it does, what is the long-term need of projects to be financing work of community response? And I think there's a place of balance in that, but I think all projects will need to be incorporating the strategies of durability. And so where they are seeing that they need to have security costs or expanded, services to be able to facilitate those community relationships, I think aiming to have those incorporated, and we do not have a funding source that is specific to providing the community support. So I think those are some stress and challenges at the property level. And I don't know, Director Bell, if you have other thoughts or sentiments about that to offer, but we can also continue the conversation as we see the elements of those that are incorporated into these projects.
Yeah, I appreciate the comments, and then Councilmember Mena, I appreciate the sentiment in your comments. One of the things that makes me think about is, so these are the metrics by which we are aiming to be responsive to council to have efficient and consolidated oversight and monitoring metrics. I guess what I'm considering is where is there room for the adaptive piece to take place for some just conversation that might be nuanced about any one particular project. So meaning we can submit this information to you all, and it probably doesn't tell as much of a rich story about that particular community and that particular neighborhood. So what I mean is, we have had certain properties, for example, that have really, really vigorous engagement with not only the local neighbors, but I think some of the community safety programs, and they're actively involved in community programming. And so that one, they can be a good neighbor, frankly, but also so that they can hear issues and be actively involved. And then, of course, as you mentioned, somewhere the priority need and the priority focus and the correlating funding is security inside the building, because the tenants have named that that's the primary issue. So it isn't a solvent, but I guess what my proposal is how can we best make sure that the oversight and monitoring doesn't become just a list of numbers and metrics that we give you all, but a space for dialogue to talk through some of these things about why do we see something here and not here? And you know, on our end, certainly not assuming what's needed here might be needed in other buildings. And so I guess it makes me think about where is something a submittal and where is something a conversation for the council. And so I won't presuppose to know that, but rather I think about where we can be both technical and adaptive in the information that we provide to council in the context of the building, but also the community.
Thank you. Any follow-up, Councilmember Mena?
Just, I completely get it, and definitely funding is a big issue, as we can see. But you know, for me, it's more about just the consciousness of it, making sure that you know we are aware and trying to address it to a degree that we can, because it is real. So.
Yes. Yeah. Councilmember Harris.
Thank you, Interim Chair Lee. I just wanted to note that in that survey, the tenant complaints is listed, and I may have missed this, but I don't know if that's just a tally or collection of complaints to measure, or if there's an opportunity to actually have the tenants provide qualitative feedback and actually do a separate survey throughout their time at the property, and not just focus on the complaints, but also what's working too. I just wanted to note that that could be really meaningful in terms of the feedback and understanding the core issues and dynamics that are happening at the project sites.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think you know, as a regular course of owning and operating a building, reaching out and getting tenant feedback and doing those surveys at the property level where you're actively engaged. And I think part of what I am curious around is where can we have that information be provided in a way so that we are understanding that they're actively directing it, and that we're having visibility about what those tenant experiences are, but ensuring that that those are who are accountable for that caretaking are the ones taking those roles on themselves. And so I appreciate that. And I think, you know, as we're you know, there's all of we have done a lot of work to ensure that there's places that tenants can find easily and consistently to be able to elevate issues. And, you know, a lot of those is it an issue that is particular to our body of work, or is it one that we are able to then connect into the right systems? And so connecting into the right systems and you know, and feeling that it isn't a barometer of all of the things going on at the project, but we can, you know, where we can see that there are spikes of issues, trends in areas, we will see them through those tenant complaint side. And so I think that's a piece of it, but absolutely you're right. It's not an indicator. It's not a consistent indicator, and it's not the place we want to prioritize actual understanding about the tenant experience at the project. Knowing that there's, you know, things that come up and need to peak and adjust, but that all projects and all tenant groups don't act the same in terms of reaching out in those. So we wouldn't want to miss something because they're not using those avenues. And so I appreciate that. Thank you.
Anyone else? So I think high level short, I think people are generally in favor of the approach and the information. There's a lot of interest on our part around the qualitative and, you know, specific information, not solely about the property itself, but what it tells us in addition to the quantitative pieces, and a lot of curiosity to see where we're going to end up on this. So sounds like the first time we'll see a very first version of this will be in April, correct?
Yes. Thank you so much.
All
And
right.
yeah, we'll incorporate this feedback and move forward with the work and make sure that we're bringing updates along. Thank you.
Thank you very much, and thank you for all of that section. Friends, I'm going to use the privilege of the chair and to say we've been online now for over 90 minutes, and that is hard on our eyes and our bodies. So we are a little bit ahead of time with the schedule. I'm going to propose that we take a 10-minute break to come off of the screen. Please get up if you can and will. Take yourself offline and I mean off screen, don't take yourself offline, and then we will come back in 10 minutes and start our next agenda item. Thank you.
Process.
Sorry, I had to figure out how to unmute myself. Yes, good morning again, Council. This is Tim. So I'll talk a little bit about our engagement and consultation with the tribes, starting a little bit back with how we started with the funding recommendation group in 2023. That group met monthly for the entire year, and it was made up of, from the tribal side, housing directors, health and human services directors, grant managers, and tribal council members. They met with all the major sections of OHCS to discuss barriers and policies to state funding that the tribes could access. And that includes obviously ARH, homeownership, housing stabilization, but we also brought in government relations, our data team, and even our procurement team. We wanted to kind of get a whole view of the landscape between OHCS and our tribal partners. And at the end of that, the recommendation, there was a recommendation to create a dedicated, flexible, and ongoing fund for the tribes. So as that worked its way through the budget process, we ended up getting that funding, and in September 18th to November 7th of last year, we sent out Dear Tribal Leader letters requesting consultation. And those Dear Tribal Leader letters are sent to tribal chairs. And then from there, the tribes each kind of determine how they want to do that consultation. One tribe, we met with their full tribal council to discuss the program. Other times we met with just tribal representatives who the council had sent in their place. In addition, we met with the tribes in one-on-ones, but we also went to a number of tribal spaces, right? So in addition to our tribal housing work group, which is the monthly meeting between OHCS staff and other agencies in the 9 tribes to discuss this, we also went and presented to two different cluster meetings. So OHCS participates in the Economic Development Cluster meeting, where we actually are, OHCS is co-chair of that cluster. And we also we also participate in the Health and Human Services cluster. And so we also, in the final place we presented was the Legislative Commission on Indian Services, which is the kind of connection between the legislature and our tribes. I know we talked about the funding formula, but obviously I think with the current environment, funding was the most debated topic. And it's the one we had to be kind of very attuned to, and but we got the majority agreement, and so that was really great. And then I think throughout this entire process, the feedback we heard from the tribes was just so encouraging. It was that this is, very thoughtful, very intentional, and a collaborative approach where they have been involved from day one of the development and creation of this, and that they want to see more of it. So, and this last piece I'll have is just like a timeline. I love timelines because I think it's important to indicate that from January 2023 to now is 3 years of efforts. And I think, I know Councilmember DeFentorum spoke on this earlier, but I think it's really important to give credit where credit is due. If we were to add a timeline to this, it would be May 2022, when I had a lengthy conversation with Councilmember DeFentorum around the need to have a new framework for how the state works with tribes on housing. And so that is the seed that got planted. But as you can see, we started in 2023. In 24 August, it went into the agency's request budget. Then in December, into the governor's recommended budget. It did become a legislative priority of the governor. Obviously, the bill did not make it through, but the budget piece did. We have done from July and August of last year some internal work. Then in August, we sent out that executive memo. And then we began in September to formalize the work plan, charter, and steering committee. Tribal engagement took place. And yeah, just yesterday, we kicked it off with, I believe all 9 tribes were at the initial kickoff. Yeah, I won't read everything, but you can see the process where we're now February, which is we're hoping to execute these grant agreements or have these grant agreements sent out potentially today or Monday, and then fully implement and execute all grant agreements and housing plans no later than April of this year. So that's my part. Are there any questions, feedback, or comments?
Thank you for the presentation. Really excited about this, and I will immediately defer to Councilmember DeFentorum, please.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I just want to say, thank you on behalf of all of the 9 tribes, to Tim, Colt, Judy, certainly Director Bell, everybody supported this. I know Mary Lee has been here on the journey for a while with us supporting, and it's great. It's really nice to see this come to fruition. It's been a long haul, it feels like, but yeah, nothing but positive stuff from me here. I think for the tribes, this really, other states are really interested in this because this is a whole different way of engaging with federally recognized tribes, at least in the housing space, that I know a lot of my colleagues, we've just not seen it. So I imagine you all will be hearing a lot about that. I know Tim already does hear about that with a lot of invitations to speak, as does Director Bell. But I want to just highlight the flexibility part. What this really did, it wasn't just like providing direct funding. It really acknowledges that we each develop housing in our own way. We provide housing differently. How we do it in Siletz is probably very different from how they do it in Umatilla, and the needs are different for different people. So I just really want to express my gratitude to everyone that's been on this journey with us. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Councilmember DeFentorum, and I will just take a moment to say, to acknowledge your leadership. We have been on the council together for quite some time. The fact that we can be at this moment because of Judy and Colt and Tim was only made possible by you being willing to step into this space on behalf of your siblings across the state. And while it's beautiful that we are here now, there's still more to do. And we can't rest on the hard work that has been here. So I just want to honor your leadership, your persistence, and the grace in which you approached all of us, taught us, and helped us understand really what was necessary to happen here. So thank you. Anyone else on council want to say a few words? Yes, please, Councilmember Mia.
Thank you very much, Interim Chair. Councilmember Lee and Councilmember DeFortorum, and I appreciate so much that this work is being done. I just wanted to share something that yesterday when I was at the Capitol, that I was speaking to somebody from NAIA in the Housing Alliance, and she had mentioned something like, I said something like, yeah, we're doing some things at OHCS and identifying tribes and trying to do some work, and I mentioned that I knew that there was things happening, which I'm really excited that today is the day that we got to hear that things are really happening. That's awesome. But she was from NAIA, and she had said that she didn't really know what I was talking about. And so maybe I wasn't explaining it right, or maybe they don't really know what's going on. So just wanted to reach out and just say, hey, didn't know if some other groups like NAIA are involved in any of this or know anything about it. But I just wanted to put it out there just because it was brought to my attention. Again, I am very new to the council, very new to this work, and don't know maybe what I'm talking about. But I do want to say that as I'm in these spaces that I try to speak on some things that I believe that are really important. And I think that this was an important thing to share about NAIA. So thank you so much. And thank you for your work, Tim and team there. It's amazing.
Councilmember, I'll just offer something that I have learned and been educated about. And it's the difference between relationships with sovereign nations and relationships with those in the community who are urban, perhaps not with their sovereign nation. And so that distinction is very important. And as I understand it, what we're looking at in this program is our relationship with sovereign nations versus a general, come you all, everybody gets a chance to try for the funds. So if anyone else wants to add to it, but I have been educated that is really the difference here when you raise the question about NAIA. Councilmember Mena.
Thank you very much for that, Shirley. I just want to echo, and what I would say is that I feel tremendously humble and privileged to be part of this conversation. It is an amazing work, and we all continue to learn on things that we're not exposed to very much. So thank you very much for all this hard work and the amazing connections that have been made.
Thank you. Anyone else on the council who would like to comment, reflect, or offer a question?
Well, Shirley, I'll maybe just offer a couple of very quick sentiments. I appreciate all of the collection of gratitude up and down and all around. I think Councilmember DeFortorum, you have been we're always very incessant and specific on what needed to be done and what was possible for us. And so I'm appreciative of you doing what the council in its most richest form has always done, which is set a bar that is unencumbered by whether we have done something or someone believes we could or couldn't do something. And so I'm very appreciative of you in so many dimensions. And we've had a lot of conversations about that, so I don't need to repeat that. And so I'm gratitude for that. Gratitude for the team has been such a gift. I'm not one for much of the emotion, but I will just have to offer just what a gift this collection of team has been. I think to see their collection of expertise come in and do this and drive it, and I will say they have driven it, is amazing and really part of the best part of working with this agency. And I would not be myself if I didn't also say this is not the pinnacle of progress as well. And so what I will say is I think we are looking forward to, in near term, without getting too outside of myself or at the risk of making Tim's eyes bulge too prematurely, I think we have some thoughts based on direct feedback that we've been hearing during this consultation about what comes next to continue to build on this so that we have or don't get too settled in incremental, as important as this progress is, but incremental progress. So there will be more to come in the near term to build on what we've learned and to put that into concrete and material action. So gratitude, and yes, more to come.
Right on. Thank you. Anyone else? Last comments or thoughts? All right, I'm going to insert myself in here and then we're going to move on. I'm going to make my traditional comment, which is I really want us to push hard on brokering between and among this project and program and other funding sources and projects and programs, for instance, energy, weatherization, some of our other developmental funds, that we are braiding and looking at all of our resources to come into this model in addition to what is in this model. So no need for a response, but I just want to say we got to push ourselves to grow this pot. We know it's reduced. We know it's, we're looking at reductions. It can't just be, it's only this pot that we use in this ways. We have a lot of other resources in this organization, and I want us to actively broker and layer and braid funds and projects together. So thank you, team. Much love. Congratulations. And appreciate you all. And Liz, we'll turn it over to eviction prevention now. Thank you.
Great, thank you. We will shift gears here with the shelter and eviction prevention budget notes. And while I am pulling up that presentation, I'd like to introduce Liz Hearn and Emily Edwards, who are joining me for this presentation. And I think I managed to successfully share that. So in 25-27, with OHCS's budget bill, there were 2 budget notes that required us to provide reports to the legislature in 2026 short session around shelter and eviction prevention. We've wrapped up the work to complete the reports, and we will be presenting these reports to the Transportation and Economic Development Subcommittee of Ways and Means the week of February 16th. So today we are providing council a briefing on those reports. Before I hand things over to Liz and Emily, I wanted to provide some context for these reports as well. These were reports we were directed to put together and to provide to the legislature, but these exist in an overall environment that we are in right now. We know that there's a critical housing supply and affordability problem for so many Oregonians. And until there are more meaningful options for people, especially folks with very low income, we will need to continue to offer options like shelter and eviction prevention as a result of the overall failure to meet people's housing needs. The budget reports on shelter and eviction prevention go into a lot of technical detail around data and policy choices, and we have fulfilled that responsibility because that's what the legislature directed us to do in these reports. But ultimately, we need to continue to focus on the bigger picture around how we deliver services to people in need. I think it can also be a helpful reminder to people that it's only been since about 2019 that the state has made legislative investments into shelter and eviction prevention at scale. And much of this funding has been one-time funding without a formal commitment of ongoing resources. So now we have this system in place, this response system that's offering critical services and support to some of the most vulnerable Oregonians, and local communities have really responded to this need, but we haven't positioned them to be able to continue this work on their own without ongoing state resources. So local communities can't sustain this work on their own. So the budget notes offer this detailed information in that context. It will help inform legislators as the legislators in the state decide what our roles and our responsibilities are in keeping people in their housing and off the street. And if we agree that, yes, we do have a responsibility to Oregonians who are unable to find and afford housing, then it will continue to cost money. And there's not, a magical new policy or a new data point that will change that. So with that understanding, I will hand things over to Liz and Emily, who will describe what we were asked to do with these reports, describe the good, careful work that went into them, and ultimately we believe that this will help support the perspective that meaningful, sustainable investments produce better outcomes for the people in our communities who are experiencing so much instability. So Liz, I think you have the next slide.
Thank you. Acting Chair Lee, council members, and Director Bell, thank you for having me here today. My name is Liz Hearn, and I am the Assistant Director of the Policy Planning and Operations team with the Housing Stabilization Division. So I am going to speak to the project of the statewide shelter system budget note report. As Liz mentioned, House Bill 5011, OHCS's budget bill, directed OHCS to develop recommendations for statewide shelter system funding that incorporated shared funding between state and other non-state funding sources. So consideration and the information gathered was around shared funding across the state for shelter. But within our analysis, consideration was also given to the type of shelter being provided, average operating and overhead costs, and sources of funding. Next slide, please. Over the last 2 biennia, state investments have significantly expanded the shelter system, increasing shelter beds by 45% since 2023. And we know from the most recent 2025 point in time report that the rate of unsheltered homelessness has declined by 4% and 40% for families with children. However, that same point in time report also revealed that the work is not done and more Oregonians are experiencing homelessness with a 35% increase from 2023. Next slide, please. So I wanted to give a little bit of overview of the current statewide shelter in Oregon and here at OHCS. OHCS has made really important investments into the shelter system. And much of this was due to one-time funding built through Executive Order 2302 and also 2023-2025 shelter operations funding that was appropriated through Senate Bill 1530 and House Bill 5511. In late 2024, the Sustainable Shelter Work Group, a work group co-convened by Representative Marsh and the Governor's Office, came together to align on an agreed upon way to really create a sustainable and statewide shelter system that considered varying shelter investments across the state, and also considering different shelter types that are responding to unique community needs. And subsequently, House Bill 3644 provided guidance and parameters for establishing a statewide shelter program that adopted a regional approach. The statewide shelter program, which received current service level funding of approximately $102.4 million until January 2nd of 2034, recently put out a request for application for regional shelter leads. And so that is well underway, and it's very, very exciting to have a statewide shelter system. Next slide, please. So over the past approximately 6 months, we have been working on gathering quantitative and qualitative data to really inform our analysis, our findings, and also our recommendations that went into this budget note report. I think one of the perhaps more significant way that we gathered information is that we did send a survey to all of our year one shelter providers. So that was a survey that was sent to 33 providers, and it gathered information about 214 state and non-state funded shelters. And with that survey, we also gave the opportunity for folks to provide feedback on the budget note process with open-ended questions. We also offered one-on-one meetings with shelter providers if that was something they were interested in. And we also, to critically engage our analysis and our recommendations, we used the OHCS racial equity analysis tool. And some critical components that we found through that process was, and our shelter providers also informed this, that we learned that due to more limited funding sources in rural areas, cost containment strategies could and have the potential to have a greater impact on rural communities of color that we know are represented. And something else that came from using the racial equity analysis tool is that we know in a cost containment environment, it may cause shelters to minimize really important services like translation services, which has the potential to undermine the efforts to have a truly culturally responsive statewide shelter system. We also utilize national best practice research. An example is gathering information on positive outcomes for housing-focused shelter from the National Alliance to End Homelessness. Next slide, please. One of our key findings that was pretty significant was that we know that across the state, shelter providers are already significantly contributing shelter funds to their OHCS supported shelters. But we also know that there is considerable regional variation of the level of reliance across the state. And that is in particular to regions outside of the Tri-County metro area. So for example, through our analysis and our survey results, we know that state revenues for shelters in Oregon that participated in the survey, we know that state revenues make up the largest share of overall shelter revenue for those rural regions, about 75%. Next slide, please.
And as I move us forward to the next slide, I just want to do a little bit of a time check. We have 10 minutes. I want to make sure that we're getting to
and this another finding was around shelter variability and system stability. And we know that across the state, shelters vary by shelter type, population served, service delivery model, and that system stability is key. And because of unique regional needs, a predictable state funding system is really important. Next slide, please. And then this is really just what we heard from our partners around sustainability. We understand from partner feedback that regions want to know we are going to invest in resources in their community. And we also know from the 2025 Point in Time report that there is an unprecedented need for shelters in our community. And lastly, as we move away from a system that is primarily based on one-time funding, the data from this budget note report on shelter will help us inform legislative conversations around system stability, which is important. Thank you. I will hand it over to Emily.
Great, thanks, Liz. Good morning, Acting Chair Lee, Council members, and Director Bell. My name is Emily Edwards. I'm the Prevention Policy and Planning Analyst with OHCS. And it's nice to be here with you today. Next slide, please. I apologize, speak a little quickly here as we try to get through the next few slides. But moving us on to eviction and homelessness prevention. The language from the budget note in House Bill 5011 is included on this slide. But in summary, OHCS was asked to provide a recommended methodology that promotes direct assistance to the greatest number of households and limits the amount of funding allocated towards administrative or program delivery costs, with program delivery including things like case management, wraparound support services for households, or outreach activities by staff as a few examples. We were asked to identify the number of additional households that would be estimated to be served as a result of these recommendations, as well as a timeline for implementation of the recommendations. Next slide, please. So briefly, we wanted to provide a bit of background on the program directly impacted by this budget note.
The Oregon Eviction Diversion and Prevention Program, or ORDAP, is OHCS's primary eviction and homelessness prevention program. Funds are allocated through the Community Action Agency Network, as well as a set aside for culturally specific organizations. OHCS has received significant investment in ORDAP in the past 5 years, beginning in the 21-23 biennium. And last biennium, a total of $105.75 million was allocated to ORDAP, with over 24,800 households served across CAAs and CSOs. For the current 25-27 biennium, $35.5 million was allocated through House Bill 5011 and House Bill 5006, which represents a 66.4% reduction in funding from the previous biennium. So this divestment makes it more critical than ever that the program is reducing homelessness as cost effectively as possible. Next slide, please. So during the 2025 legislative session, we heard concerns regarding the percentage of funding going or being directed towards infrastructure costs versus direct financial assistance. And so in response, at the beginning of the 25-27 biennium, OHCS directed ORDAP grantees to implement cost containment strategies for year 1 of the biennium. And these strategies were aimed at increasing the ratio of funds allocated towards direct financial assistance to households, and therefore decreasing infrastructure costs. And so doing so has led to greater continuity across grantees, as can be seen in the whisker plot here, with the 23-25 biennium displaying a much greater range and more variance in the percent of funds allocated towards infrastructure costs, and the 25-27 biennium showing significantly less variance across grantees. Next slide, please. So likewise, OHCS coordinated with grantees to identify goals for the number of households served this biennium. In total, CAAs and CSOs have agreed to a cumulative goal of 7,255 households. While this is significantly less than the 24,800 households served last biennium due to the reduction in funding, it does represent a significant increase from the legislative goal proposed in House Bill 5011, which was an estimated 4,887, thereby maximizing the total number of households served as requested in the budget note. In addition, the average cost per household ranged across grantees from just over 2,700 to a little over 7,000, and had a median cost per household of just 4,111. I think if we go back one slide, thank you. So the methodology that we utilized for the final report included a funding and outcomes analysis that included items such as approximate cost per household, the average number of months of rent assistance, the ratio of direct financial assistance to infrastructure costs, and demographic data such as race, ethnicity, age, disability status, and household size. We also incorporated data from a literature review to illustrate the broader context of the program, and included things such as risk factors of eviction, cost burden, and median fair market rent. And throughout the process, we utilized OHCS's racial equity analysis tool to inform our findings and subsequent recommendations. As an example, our analysis identified that race, income, neighborhood, and presence of children in the household are areas that can be used to identify heightened risk of eviction, and therefore are opportunities for targeted outreach to at-risk households within a homelessness prevention framework. And lastly, we invited input from ORDAP grantees through solicitation of written feedback, a highly attended listening session with CAAs, a discussion at a CAPO board meeting, and one-on-one meetings as requested. So a few key findings that we wanted to highlight. First, Portland State University's Evicted in Oregon research found that in 2024, 30,507 evictions in Oregon were filed, which is a rate of 1 eviction filed for every 20 renter households. This is also 123% of the number of evictions filed in 2023, showing a really significant increase. And this upward trend is visible across the state, with some regions seeing greater increases in rates of eviction than others, as represented in this graph. Next slide. And our research also found that eviction and homelessness prevention is a significantly more cost-effective intervention when compared to other interventions in the homelessness response system, such as emergency shelter and rehousing services. ORDEP's average cost per household remained under $5,000, as shared earlier, with the median of just $4,111, making it a highly cost-effective intervention. And I see there's a time check as well, so please let me know if we need to end a bit early.
Yeah, I think if you can, hi, sorry, Emily.
Oh, that's okay.
If you can move to wrapping up the key points, I want to give time for the council to have any discussion. I've asked folks to stay an extra 5 minutes. Thank you.
Okay, wonderful. Yes. So let's see here. So lastly, for eviction prevention to effectively serve as homelessness prevention, our analysis also identified key elements that must be incorporated, and those include the role of wraparound support services for households, appropriate investments into infrastructure costs, staff capacity, which requires necessary investment into administrative costs, and the capacity to conduct proactive outreach to households most at risk of homelessness. And these findings were reinforced through our literature review of homelessness prevention best practices, as well as what we heard repeatedly from our grantees during the engagement process. And with that, I will turn things back over to Liz Weber to help facilitate discussion and respond to any questions. Thank you.
Perfect. Thank you so much, team. Appreciate it. It's a lot of information to get through. Counselors, any comments or questions about all that we heard? Yes, please, Councilmember Meehan.
There just isn't enough time today. I'm just wondering if this is just something that we can discuss going forward. This is an important, both. Thank you so much for the presentation, team, and I really do appreciate it. But I feel like there's just a lot in this last 10, 15 minutes that I got a lot to say, a lot of questions, and I want to make sure that it gets the due time, but I do appreciate the work and just would like to ask that we could carry this over for another conversation coming soon.
Yes, I appreciate those comments. And Shirley, what I might offer is maybe two things. One, this will be an active conversation that we will be bringing back to the council over the series of probably the next several months. In the near term, we've posed a question to the council to which if any council member wants to meet as a follow-up from this meeting to get into some of the details, not instead of, but in addition to that, which what we'll bring into this space, we can do that, particularly if you want to give feedback ahead of our presentation to the legislature in mid-February.
Absolutely.
Great.
Thank
So
you,
I'm hearing
Director
a
Bell.
twofer. Take a look at the question posed. If you have feedback that will be timely for this presentation to the legislature, please reach out immediately. Do not wait. And if we can, as we're looking at the agenda for next month, maybe scheduling 15, 20 minutes for us to just dive back in to the discussion. And we'll hopefully then have heard how the report went back to the legislature. So that might be a nice part 2 of this. Yeah?
Happy to.
Perfect. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you, everyone. So with that, we've gotten through on our agenda. What a great day and great way to start off this Friday. And are there any other last comments from council members? All right, thanks for the extra time. I appreciate everyone's work. I hope the good start to our morning that we just had continues on into the rest of your Friday, and we will adjourn the meeting.